Before we get into today's video, please quickly check to see if you're subscribed. It's totally free and allows you to never miss one of our stories. Swarm leader Envod's heart skipped a beat as the sensor array lit up with hundreds of new contacts. Through the curved viewport of their Sunfire class fighter, the vast emptiness of space seemed deceptively peaceful, much like the empty sector where Earth's promised warships should have been gathering, but still was vacant of human presence.
Command's redistributing the attack vectors,
Evasori said from the co-pilot's seat, his emerald scales reflecting the low light of the nav screen. His long four-fingered hands reached for the physical interface while his head frills twitched with concentration, the sensitive membranes shifting colors from deep blue to anxious purple.
Thanks to the missing humans, they're trying to compensate for the gap in our formation.
Envod's dorsal spines rippled with frustration, the motion sending a wave of colorful patterns across his copper-toned scales. The gap, the massive strategic void where Earth's forces were supposed to be, remained empty after hours of failed communication attempts. The humans had pledged their support and promised to stand with the Kregior coalition against the Sovereign's expansion. Yet here they were, moments away from the largest offense in the coalition's history, and humanity was nowhere to be found.
Running final systems check,
Swarm leader Envod said, pushing aside thoughts of their missing allies.
Weapons? All plasma banks charged and synchronized. Missile tubes clear. Laser ready.
Evasori replied.
Shields?
Envod asked.
Operating at 112%. Those modifications from engineering are holding steady.
Through the narrow link connecting them to their fighter, Envod could feel the ship's systems operating in perfect harmony. The Sunfire fighter was ready for battle. Whether the coalition was ready without Earth's support remained to be seen.
Signal from command,
Evasori announced, his head frills twitching.
Admiral Kidara is addressing our fleet.
A hologram materialized between them, showing the Admiral's scaled face. Like most Kregior, her reptilian features were marked with healed wounds, each scar telling the story of battles fought and survived.
Warriors of the Coalition,
she began, her voice loud but controlled.
Our intelligence confirms the Sovereign fleet approaches the nexus point, just as predicted. They believe their movement goes undetected. They believe they will catch us unprepared.
She paused, her inner eyelids flickering.
They are wrong.
Envod exchanged a look with Evasori. They'd flown together long enough that words weren't necessary. Both knew what the other was thinking. The plan had been crafted with Earth's forces in mind, counting on their rumored naval capabilities. The humans' unusual projectile weapons and their mastery of three-dimensional combat tactics would have helped by at least some extent.
We have adjusted our strategy to account for recent developments, the Admiral continued. The absence of our human allies is unfortunate, but it will not define this day. The Coalition stands ready. We strike from the shadows, and we will show the Sovereigns that their aggression ends here.
The virtual display flickered out, leaving Envod and Evasori in momentary silence. Around their fighter, the vast Coalition fleet waited in perfect formation, each ship maintaining its position with precision, the coordination born of countless drills and battles.
They really aren't coming, are they?
Evasori's voice was quiet, almost lost among sudden hisses and gentle sounds of their systems. Envod's hands tightened on the controls.
Doesn't matter now. We have our orders. Flight check complete. Linking with Squadron Tactical Net.
New data streams flowed through their neural interface as they connected with the other fighters in their wing. The battle plan unfolded in their minds, a complex sequence of repositioning and weapons fire, designed to trap and destroy the approaching Sovereign fleet. Envod conveyed the details to every fighter under him as he received them.
Multiple contacts entering the system,
Evasori reported.
Sovereign signatures confirmed, numbers matching intelligence estimates. Time to remind the galaxy why you don't underestimate our species,
Envod said, feeling their ship's eager response through the neural link.
Even without the humans.
The vast darkness of space froze, waiting for the moment when everything would explode into action. Somewhere out there, the Sovereign fleet approached, unaware they were flying into a trap. Whether the trap would hold without Earth's forces remained an open question, but speculation no longer mattered. The time for doubt had passed. The battle for the Nexus Point was about to begin.
All squadrons, prepare to decloak on my mark!
Admiral Kidara's voice was projected through the battle channel with crystalline clarity.
Sovereign fleet is committed to their approach vector. No turning back now.
Envod ran a final check on their cloaking systems while Avasori monitored the tactical display. The enemy fleet, a massive group of sharp-angled warships in the distinctive black and gold of the Sovereigns, continued their advance toward the Nexus Point, completely unaware of the trap about to spring.
Think the humans got scared?
Avasori's question carried a hint of bitter humor.
Maybe they took one look at those Sovereign dreadnoughts and decided to sit this one out.
Doubt it, Envod replied, adjusting their fighters' position slightly.
From what I've heard about their history, humans love being outnumbered. Remember those stories about their ancient naval battles? The ones where they'd attack ships 3 times their size with wooden boats? Yeah, hard to believe that's the same species that runs away from battle.
Avasori's head frills twitched with amusement.
Maybe they just lost their fighting spirit, or got lost in space. I heard their navigation systems are as primitive as their projectile weapons.
The tactical channel crackled again.
All units synchronize decloak countdown. Mark in 30 seconds.
Envod felt his scales tighten with anticipation as the numbers began counting down in their neural feed. Around them, hundreds of coalition ships waited in perfect formation, ready to appear from nowhere and catch the Sovereign fleet in a deadly crossfire.
15 seconds.
Avasori announced, all traces of humor gone from his voice.
Weapons hot. Shield harmonics optimized for initial burst.
10 seconds.
Through their narrow link, Envod could feel the ship's eagerness matching their own. The Sunfire-class fighters were built for moments like this. Their combination of speed and firepower made them perfect for the confusion of close-quarters space combat.
5 seconds.
Would have been nice to see those human ships in action,
Avasori said quietly.
Just once.
3, 2, 1. All units decloak and engage!
Space itself burst as hundreds of coalition ships materialized around the Sovereign fleet. The enemy's reaction was immediate. Shields snapping to full power, weapon systems spinning up, formations beginning to adapt to the sudden threat.
Multiple squadrons. Confirm visual on General Ezel's mercenary crews moving to engage the Sovereign fleet.
Came the update from command.
They're taking the primary assault vector.
Envod guided their fighter into attack position, watching as the infamous mercenary ship's sleek vessels marked with distinctive red stripes moved ahead of the main coalition force. General Ezel's reputation for tactical brilliance was well earned, and his fleet's presence had been a major factor in planning this ambush.
Sovereign fleet responding slower than expected,
Avasori reported, his black eyes wide, gazing at the virtual display.
Their formation is still adapting. We've got them.
All fighters engage at will,
Admiral Kidara commanded.
Show them why you don't challenge the coalition, even without Earth's support. This day belongs to us!
Envod felt a surge of pride as they pushed their fighter forward. The humans might have failed to show up, but the coalition would manage without them. As the first exchanges of weapons fire lit up the space around them, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This was going to be a good day for the coalition, a day they would capture the Nexus Point from the Sovereigns. The first volley from General Ezel's fleet tore through the Sovereign formation with great precision. Brilliant streaks of plasma fire advanced in burning paths through space, finding gaps in the enemy's hasty defensive screens.
Now that's why they pay him the big credits,
Avasori said, monitoring the tactical feed as Envod rolled their fighter through a series of evasive maneuvers.
Look at that targeting solution. Beautiful.
Envod was about to respond when Ezel's voice cut across all command channels, his rough tone conveying his decades of combat experience.
Push the advantage! All wings execute the attack pattern Crimson 7. Don't let them regroup.
Their neural link received combat data as Envod aligned their fighter with the rest of their squadron. The Sovereign ships were struggling to maintain formation, caught between the hammer of Izel's mercenaries and the anvil of the main coalition fleet.
Target lock on enemy interceptor.
Adversary called out.
300 units to the right, moving to cover their capital ship's flank.
Got it! Envod's fingers reached for the controls, feeling the Sunfire's weapon systems respond through his neural connection.
Firing solution plotted!
Their fighters' plasma banks discharged in perfect sequence, 4 bolts of superheated matter crossing the void in heartbeats. The enemy interceptor tried to evade, but Evad had anticipated its movement. The plasma bolts caught in mid-turn, overwhelming its shields and reducing the vessel to expanding clouds of debris.
Clean kill.
Avasori confirmed, already scanning for their next target.
Wait. Getting new tactical data. Izel's fleet is pressing deeper into their formation than planned.
Through their viewport, Envod could see the mercenary ships driving hard into the heart of the Sovereign fleet, their distinctive red-striped hulls visible even amid the chaos of battle. It was aggressive, perhaps too aggressive, but Izel's unconventional tactics were legendary for a reason.
Squadron, form up on my vector!
Taking point as their wing reassembled.
We're going to exploit that breach Izel's creating.
Space around them had become a deadly war zone where a mistake would be their last, so they were careful. Coalition fighters wove between capital ships, harassing Sovereign gunners and disrupting their firing solutions. The earlier confusion in the enemy ranks was fading, replaced by the disciplined resistance they were famous for.
Multiple Sovereign dreadnoughts repositioning,
Avasori reported.
They're trying to... Wait, something's wrong.
What is it?
Izel's ships. They're powering down their weapons. All of them. In the middle of combat.
Envod felt their scales ripple with unease. Through their neural link, they could sense their fighter systems registering the sudden change in battlefield energy signatures. Dozens of mercenary ships, their weapons suddenly silent in the midst of chaos.
This has to be a malfunction in our tactical feed,
Envod said, but even as the words left their mouth, they knew it wasn't true. Something was happening. Something that hadn't been a part of any battle plan they'd reviewed.
All coalition forces, be advised!
Admiral Kidara's voice thundered through the confusion, tension evident even through the command channel.
We're detecting unusual movement patterns from Izel's fleet. Maintain formation and await...
The Admiral's transmission cut off abruptly as new energy signatures appeared across the tactical display. The mercenary ships were powering up again, but their weapons weren't targeting the Sovereigns anymore. They were targeting the Coalition fleet.
By the deep void,
Avasori whispered, his head frills pressed flat against his skull.
What is he doing?
The answer was about to become horrifyingly clear. Izel's scaled face appeared on every communication channel in the Coalition fleet, his expression cold and calculating. Gone was the familiar battle-hardened commander who had led countless successful campaigns for their species. In his place was something else entirely.
To all Coalition forces,
he began, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth.
I suggest you power down your weapons immediately. My fleet now stands with the Sovereigns, as it always should have.
Envod's hands tightened on the controls, his primary heart pounding against his chest. Around their stations, space had become eerily still, as if the entire universe was holding its breath.
Izel!
Admiral Kidara's voice showed her surprise.
Explain yourself!
It's quite simple, Admiral. The Sovereigns understand something that the Coalition never has. The necessity of strong, centralized rule. They've offered me governorship of my home system. No more democratic chaos, no more endless debates, just order as it should be.
Avasori's tactical readings suddenly spiked.
Multiple Sovereign capital ships decloaking behind us. They're cutting off our retreat vectors.
The trap was springing shut, not the one the Coalition had planned. Through their neural link, Envod felt their fighter systems registering the new threats, dozens of sovereign warships appearing where they should have been only space.
Do you really think,
Ezel continued, his voice dripping with condescension,
that your intelligence about the sovereign fleet movements was accurate by chance? That such a perfect opportunity would simply fall into your laps? I've been feeding you exactly what you needed to see for months.
Weapon fire erupted across space as Ezel's mercenaries opened up on their former allies. Coalition ships caught completely out of position scrambled to respond to threats from multiple directions.
All fighters, break formation!
Admiral Kidara commanded.
Defense pattern Delta 9! Do not let them box us in!
Envad threw their fighter into a tight spiral, narrowly avoiding a burst of plasma fire from what had been a friendly ship moments before. Through their viewport, they could see Coalition vessels trying to regroup, but the positioning was all wrong. They'd arranged their forces to spring a trap, not to defend against one.
So this is why the humans didn't show up,
Avasori said bitterly, unaware that he had transmitted his voice over the main channel.
They must have known. Their intelligence services probably uncovered the plot.
No.
Ezel's voice cut through the air again, having apparently heard the transmission.
The humans are simply cowards, unwilling to commit to a real fight. But their absence made this all the easier. Your fleet positioned exactly where we needed it, with no unexpected variables to account for.
A massive explosion lit up space as one of the Coalition's heavy cruisers succumbed to combined fire from the mercenary and sovereign ships. The blast illuminated the battlefield for a brief moment, revealing the true scale of the predicament.
Your choices are simple,
Ezel continued.
Surrender now, and the sovereigns will be merciful. Resist, and...
He let the threat hang in the air as another Coalition ship erupted in flames. Admiral Kidara's response came swiftly.
Coalition forces, maintain combat operations and regroup. We did not come this far to bow to traitors and tyrants.
But even as she spoke, Envad could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The combined forces of the Sovereign Fleet and Ezel's mercenaries had them surrounded and outgunned. The carefully planned ambush had become a deadly trap, and for the first time since the war began, Envad felt something he never expected to feel in this battle: despair. Another Coalition cruiser vanished in a sphere of expanding plasma, its death throes lighting up the battlefield. Through their neural link, Envad felt their fighters' systems registering the mounting casualties. Too many ships lost, too many good pilots gone.
Command vessel taking heavy fire,
Avasori reported with a tight voice.
Admiral Kidara's shields are failing.
Envad banked their fighter hard, weaving through the debris field that had been Coalition warships minutes ago.
We can't let them take out command. Form up on me. We're making a run at those mercenary gunships targeting the Admiral.
Envad, that's a one-way ride. Their point defense coverages.
He's less coordinated than usual.
Envad cut in, already plotting the attack vector.
Look at their formation. Ezel's crews are used to fighting alongside us, not against us. Their defense patterns still have gaps, coalition-sized gaps.
Through their viewport, they could see the mercenary gunships hammering away at the Admiral's position. The command vessel's shields were visible now, flickering dangerously as they absorbed hit after hit.
All remaining fighters!
Admiral Kidara's voice came through, strained but unbowed.
Begin emergency dispersal procedures. Break into small groups and retreat through any gap you can find. That's an order.
Envod's scales tightened against their skin.
Avasori! Plot me a course through their formation. We are not running.
His co-pilot's head frills rippled with grim determination as his fingers reached for the speed controls.
Course plotted. You know this is crazy, right?
Noted.
Envad pushed his fighter's engines to maximum, feeling the surge of power through his neural connection.
Broadcasting to any squadrons in range. We're making a push to support command. Join up or clear our vector.
To his surprise, 2 other Sunfire fighters fell into formation alongside them, then 3 more. Through the command channel, they could hear other pilots refusing the order to retreat.
Coalition fighters, you have your orders!
Admiral Kidara transmitted, her voice sad.
I will not have you throw your lives away needlessly!
With respect, Admiral,
Envod responded, their fighters screaming through space toward the enemy formation.
we're not going anywhere.
The mercenary gunships began to adjust their formation as they detected the approaching fighters, but Envod had been right. Their defensive formation was imperfect. Years of fighting alongside coalition forces had left patterns in their tactics, muscle memory that couldn't be unlearned in a single battle.
Multiple sovereign capital ships moving to intercept,
Avasori warned.
they're trying to cut us off from the command vessel.
Through their neural link, Envod could feel their fighter system straining as they pushed it beyond normal combat parameters. The space around them became a maze of weapons fire and exploding debris, but they could see their target clearly, a gap in the mercenary formation just wide enough for a Sunfire fighter to slip through.
All fighters, follow my lead!
Envod transmitted to their impromptu squadron.
Fire everything you have at their port shield generators! Overload them in a single spot!
The response came in actions rather than words. 6 Sunfire fighters, moving in perfect coordination, unleashed their full weapon payloads at a single point in the mercenary gunship's defense formation. For a moment, it seemed like even that concentrated firepower wouldn't be enough. Then, the shields buckled. The hole was small and it lasted just a moment, but it was enough. Coalition fighters poured through the gap, weapons blazing, tearing into the exposed flanks of the ships threatening their command vessel.
By the deep void!
Avasori breathed, watching as their attack disrupted the mercenary formation.
We actually made it through!
But even as they spoke, Envod could see more sovereign ships moving to engage, and Izel's forces were already beginning to recover from their surprise. They'd bought the Admiral some time by making themselves the target, but the battle was far from over. And they were running out of miracles as they played the role of target.
Shields holding!
Avasori called out as a blast grazed their fighter.
We can't take a direct hit!
The brief victory of their desperate charge had faded. While they'd managed to buy the command vessel precious minutes, the sheer weight of enemy numbers was proving overwhelming. The space around them had become a graveyard for their impromptu squadron, the debris field growing larger with each passing moment.
Admiral?
A new voice cut through the command channel, conveying his voice through a channel that only a select few had access to. It was Captain Vress of the Coalition Security Council.
We must consider terms of surrender. We're losing too many ships, too many lives.
Swarm leader Envod felt his scales bristle at the word surrender, even as he threw their fighter into another evasive spiral. Through his neural link, he could feel their ship systems failing one by one, power reserves dropping to critical levels.
Weapon banks low,
Avasori reported grimly.
Down to emergency power. Envod, we've got almost nothing left to fight with.
Admiral Kidara's voice came through, weaker than before, but still carrying authority.
Captain Vress, the Sovereigns have never honored terms of surrender. You know what happened to the Centauri world.
Better slavery than extinction,
Vress countered.
General Izel might still have enough honor to... Honor!
Izel's voice cut through all channels again.
You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about honor. This is about control. The power to end the chaotic mess you call the current regime. The power to bring real order to our worlds.
Another coalition cruiser exploded nearby, the blast wave buffeting their already damaged fighter. Through the viewport, Envod could see the command vessel's shields flickering, barely holding against the continuous barrage.
Avasori,
Envod said quietly, his hands steady on the controls despite everything.
Plot me a coalition course with Izel's flagship. What? No, you can't. Everything beside the lasers is gone, but we still have engines. One good ram could open a hole in their defenses. Give the others a chance to... I won't help you with this.
Avasori's head frills were flat against his skull, a sign of absolute determination.
We've fought too long together. If we go out firing the lasers, not...
Their voice trailed off as new alerts flashed across the virtual display. Multiple ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battlefield. Massive energy signatures unlike anything their sensors had registered before.
More sovereign reinforcements?
Envod asked, already trying to plot an escape vector with his failing engines. Avasori's fingers steadied.
No, these signatures are completely different. They're not matching any known ships.
The rest of their words were lost as space itself seemed to tear open. Massive vessels emerged from the ruptures, their hulls gleaming with a metallic sheen unlike anything in known space. They moved with impossible speed, crossing vast distances in seconds.
For Void's sake!
Envod breathed, watching as more ships appeared. Not dozens, but hundreds, each one bristling with what looked like primitive projectile weapons, but on a scale that defied comprehension. For a moment, absolute silence fell across all command channels. Even Ezel seemed at a loss for words. Then a new voice spoke, unfamiliar, using a Coalition standard translator, its tone carrying a strong voice.
This is Captain Jackson of the Earth Defense Force First Fleet. Sorry we're late to the party. Traffic was hell back home.
As he spoke, the first volley from the human fleet reduced 3 sovereign dreadnoughts to expanding clouds of debris before anyone could react. Not with plasma, not with energy weapons, but with massive steel balls accelerated to a small fraction of light speed. The damage was catastrophic, unprecedented. Shields configured to deflect energy weapons crumbled against sudden kinetic force, the unexpected attack being incredibly effective.
Sweet mercy,
Avasori whispered, their tactical displays struggling to track the speed of the human vessel.
Are they actually using just projectile weapons? Coalition forces,
Captain Jackson's voice came through again.
Be advised we're deploying our close support squadrons. Might want to give them some room to work.
Smaller craft poured from the human capital ship, moving with a speed that seemed to mock the laws of physics. They weren't sleek like Coalition fighters or angular like sovereign vessels. They were blocky, inelegant, almost crude in their design. And they were tearing through enemy formations like they were made of paper.
Their sublight acceleration is impressive,
Avasori said, monitoring the tactical feed.
Most organic life forms wouldn't survive those G-forces.
Who said anything about organic pilots?
A new voice cut in, young, male, distinctly human.
Earth Fleet strike fighter here. Some of us are drone-operated. Means they can pull maneuvers that would turn your insides into lizard soup. No offense.
Through their neural link, Envod felt his fighter systems cataloging the impossible scene before them. Human ships were executing turns that should have torn them apart, firing weapons that ignored shields entirely, moving in formations that made the best Coalition pilots look clumsy in comparison.
Ezel's fleet is breaking formation,
Avasori reported, his head frills rippling with excitement.
They're trying to regroup with the sovereign capital ships, but the humans are between them.
Not for long, they're not,
Captain Jackson transmitted.
All Earth forces execute Operation Redemption.
The human fleet split into 2 massive groups with great precision. The larger vessel, still firing their devastating railguns, herded the enemy forces into a closing trap. Their drone fighters darted through the chaos like a swarm of angry insects, disrupting any attempt at coordinated movement.
Coalition Command,
Jackson continued.
If you've got any ships still capable of combat, we could use your help boxing them in. We've got the firepower, but nobody knows their tactics better than you do.
Admiral Kidara's response was immediate. All functioning Coalition vessels, form up and engage. The humans have given us a second chance. Let's make it count. Envod checked their fighter status. They were running on emergency power, weapons depleted, shields barely functional, but their engines still worked. And that was enough.
Avasori, can you get me targeting data on their formation weak points? We have nothing but the lasers. We can relay coordinates to the human gunners.
Already on it,
the co-pilot replied, grabbing the tactical control's thigh.
Patching us into their targeting network now. By the great void, look at their targeting vectors. They are going head-on to the big targets.
Through their viewport, Envod could see General Ezel's flagship trying to maneuver away from the trap. But there was nowhere to go.
The humans had turned space itself into a killing ground, and for the first time since the battle began, victory didn't just seem possible, it seemed inevitable.
Coalition fighter, this is Captain Jake Reynolds of the Interceptor team.
A new voice cut into their private channel.
Saw you pull that crazy stunt earlier, trying to save your command ship. Mind if I join your wing?
Through the viewport, Envod saw a human vessel pull alongside them. It was smaller than most Earth ships they had seen so far, barely larger than their Sunfire, but bristling with what appeared to be oversized railguns and missile tubes. Unlike the blocky drone fighters, this vessel moved with an organic grace, unmistakably indicating that a human was commanding it.
Could use the help,
Envod responded, checking their depleted ammunition.
Especially if those guns of yours are as effective as they look. Oh, they're better,
Jake said, and Envod could hear the grin in his voice.
Newest generation of coil guns. They fire depleted uranium rounds. Punches through shields like they're tissue paper.
Avasori's virtual display lit up with new readings.
Multiple signatures breaking off from the main battle. Looks like Ezel's personal guard. 5 heavy cruisers escorting his flagship. Perfect,
Jake transmitted.
Just enough for each of us to have something to shoot at. Hey, Command. Permission to pursue with our coalition friends here.
Admiral Kidara's voice came through clearly. Coalition Fighter Sunfire 217. You're authorized to pursue with Earth support. Stop him. Whatever it takes. The chase that followed was unlike anything Envod had experienced in his years of combat. Ezel's ships were fast, but the human vessel kept pace effortlessly, its strange engines leaving trails of blue fire across space. Their Sunfire fighter, though slightly damaged, managed to match their speed.
Coming up on the gas giant's rings,
Jake announced.
They're going to try to use the debris field for cover. Classic move. Then we'll just have to be faster,
Envod replied, feeling their fighter respond eagerly through the neural link.
Avasori, plot us an intercept course through the rings.
The space around the gas giant's rings became a deadly 3-dimensional maze. Ezel's escort ships opened fire, their energy weapons creating beautiful but lethal patterns among the ice and rock fragments. Jake's ship responded with precisely targeted coil gun rounds, each shot leaving trails of plasma behind.
These guys are good,
Jake commented as an enemy cruiser's shot grazed his shields.
But they're still fighting like it was yesterday. Our weapons are still catching them off guard. Watch this.
The human ship suddenly cut its main engines, using maneuvering thrusters to spin in place while maintaining its velocity. The main coil guns, the ones Spinal mounted to his ship, sparkled in rapid succession, the depleted uranium rounds catching one of Ezel's escorts perfectly along its length. The cruiser's shields flared and died, and the kinetic impact tore it nearly in half.
Now that,
Avasori said admiringly,
was a good shot.
Envod didn't waste time with words, instead taking advantage of the gap created by Jake's attack. Their fighter aimed at the enemy formation, firing the auxiliary laser, the only weapon that required just energy to operate. They hit the target, and another escort ship fell, its reactor going critical in a spectacular explosion.
General Ezel's flagship is making a run for the upper atmosphere,
Jake reported.
He's using the clouds to try to scramble our targeting systems. Smart, but not smart enough. You thinking what I'm thinking?
Envod checked their data, seeing the opportunity immediately.
If we track the heat from the friction of his ship with the atmosphere, we could track him. Cut off his escape route. I like the way you think,
Jake responded.
Lead the way. We've got your back.
The gas giant's massive bulk loomed before them as their small formation began the high-speed approach. Ahead, Ezel's flagship was diving deeper into the atmosphere, its escorts forming a defensive formation behind him.
Going dark,
Jake transmitted as his ship vanished from both visual and sensor readings.
Earth's cloaking tech might be crude compared to yours, but it should be enough to fool them as they are on the planet.
Envod engaged their own cloaking systems, positioning their fighter in the calculated intercept zone. The gas giant's swirling atmosphere below them created complex interferences, the perfect hiding spot for an ambush.
2 scout ships emerging,
Avasori reported, their voice barely above a whisper, despite it being utterly unnecessary.
Checking for pursuits before Ezel makes his run.
The scouts emerged from the upper atmosphere, their sensors sweeping the area in standard search patterns. For a moment, Envod worried their hiding spots might be detected, but the interference from the gas giant masked their signatures perfectly.
I've got the scouts,
Jake transmitted quietly.
Wait for my mark. Wait. Now!
The human ship decloaked at the same time its guns fired, shooting twice in rapid succession. In a matter of seconds, each shot caught a scout ship's center mass. The depleted uranium rounds punched straight through their shields, turning both vessels into expanding debris fields before they could transmit a warning.
Clear skies,
Jake confirmed, his ship vanishing again under its cloak together with the sunfire.
Here comes the main event.
The surface of the gas giant seemed to boil as Ezel's flagship burst through the cloud layers, its hull glowing from atmospheric friction. The massive vessel was wounded from its desperate dive, its shields flickering unevenly as it tried to stabilize. Entire sections of its starboard side were scorched and gutted, exposing skeletal support structures and flickering interior lights.
The planet storms fried half their defense systems,
Jake muttered, watching the flagship struggle to maintain formation.
Shields are at 20%, maybe less.
That's what you get for diving blind into an atmosphere like this, Envod replied.
Makes our job easier. On my mark. 3, 2, 1.
Their fighter decloaked simultaneously with Jake's ship, catching the flagship in a perfect crossfire. The Sunfire's laser weapons struck first, targeting the already weakened shield generators. The flagship's defenses flared brilliantly, trying to compensate.
Direct hit!
Avasori called out.
Shield grid is destabilizing but still holding. We need more firepower. Then wait for my kinetic rounds to hit them,
Jake responded.
Divert all power to forward weapons,
Envod commanded, trying to get one last shot from the Sunfire.
We hit them together, everything we've got!
The core of the Sunfire almost melted, but the lasers fired again. They struck in perfect synchronization with the kinetic rounds the humans had fired earlier, overwhelming what remained of the flagship's defenses. The massive vessel's hull began to break apart, secondary explosions blossoming along its length. Then its power core went critical. The explosion was spectacular, the flagship coming apart in a massive eruption of energy and debris. They pulled back quickly, avoiding the worst of the blast wave, watching as the ship that had carried their greatest traitor disappeared in a final burst of light. Through their tactical display, Envod could see the remaining sovereign forces beginning to retreat, though most of them had failed to do so. Without Ezel's leadership and numbers, they had no choice but to attempt to withdraw.
Coalition Command, Earth Fleet,
Jake reported, his voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of a job well done.
Target eliminated. General Ezel's flagship is confirmed destroyed.
The response came from both Admiral Kidara and Captain Jackson simultaneously.
Well
done! Envod looked out at the debris field that had been Ezel's flagship. Feeling not triumph, but a sort of quiet finality, the battle was over. The war, perhaps, was about to follow.
So,
Jake's voice came through on their private channel, more casual now.
Either of you ever had a proper Earth celebration? Because I think this calls for one.
4 hours after Ezel's elimination, the observation deck of the Coalition command ship had become a gathering point for both species. Through the vast viewport, repair crews could be seen tending to extensive damage, human and Coalition ships working side by side. Envod and Avasori stood slightly apart from the crowd, their scales still tense from the intense battle, when they heard unfamiliar footsteps approaching them.
I hope I'm not interrupting,
Jake said as he joined them, still wearing his flight suit. Up close, he looked surprisingly small compared to their tall, scaled forms, but there was an undeniable presence about him.
Thought it was about time we met face to face. Your timing seems to be improving,
Avasori commented with a ripple of their head frills, the coalition equivalent of a smile. Jake laughed.
Yeah, about that. We weren't really late, you know. Our intelligence detected Ezel's betrayal months ago, but we needed him to fully commit to his plan. If we had shown up and attacked him earlier, your species might have thought it was us who switched sides. So you let us think humanity had abandoned us,
Envod said, understanding dawning in their expression.
to make the trap complete. And to give us time to modify our weapons specifically to counter sovereign shields.
Jake added.
Though I have to admit, watching you two try to ram his ship before we arrived, that took serious guts.
He extended his hand toward them, palm open.
On Earth we have this tradition called a handshake. It started as a way to show you weren't holding a weapon, but it became something more. A symbol of trust, friendship, and respect.
Envod looked at the offered hand for a moment, then carefully extended their own 4-fingered appendage.
4 fingers meet 5,
he said as he clasped hands with Jake.
Celebrating the fact that humans weren't late after all. Not late,
Jake grinned, shaking hands with Avasori next.
We arrived exactly when we meant to.